Welcome to WholeCEO with Lisa G. I'm the best-selling author of The Boss Weight Loss. I'm bringing you the top tips to be unstoppable. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to actually pull up a chair with today's top experts in mindset, weight loss, business, and more. Learn our top tips so that you can have more energy, be fit and resilient, feel unstoppable, unshakable, and unbreakable. He's a licensed acupuncturist, functional medicine specialist, the distributor of Rubimed products from Switzerland that change how you think. For a decade, he's helped over 1,000 people overcome negative subconscious blocks, reach their financial goals, improve their relationships, and overcome past trauma, having worked with many doctors around the world. Thomas Rao in Switzerland, several others, a lead clinician at Hope for Cancer Medical Center in Tijuana, Mexico, and currently operates Privia Naturals. Nick Fransen, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Lisa. How are you today?
I'm good and so excited to meet you and all the good things you're up to in the world. Let's jump in with some of the things that you have done with helping people break old subconscious patterns and thus be more successful. How does that work?
Well, subconscious patterns, they can be created in a number of different ways, right? And that's what I think a lot of people might say, well, my subconscious, I don't have negative patterns, but we really all do. And if we think about it, they can come on in a lot of different ways. It can come from our parents. As great as some of our parents may have been, some may have been good, some may have not been so good.
Right.
They have given us.
I'm familiar with that.
Right. So they have given us a lot of what we believe how the world runs. This is how, Lisa, here's how you're supposed to fit into the world. Here's how you're supposed to act. And here's how you're supposed to be. Now, usually good parents are trying their very best to give you and raise you in a way that is going to be beneficial long term. But sometimes they give you things and program or teach you things that are really not in your own self-interest. And so it may take a while for us to actually figure out, gosh, that's not how the world works. Or that's not how I really am supposed to be. And so there's other ways that these can come, but that's just one of the ways that these subconscious blocks can put us on a road that may not always be the best.
Well, I've experienced that firsthand myself, where you are in a relationship with somebody and then all of a sudden you start to realize that the traits that are almost like, let's say, in your shadow side from your parents are starting to interact with each other rather than you interacting with each other. Have you ever experienced anything like that in relationships?
Well, I think what begins to happen is we try to find our own footing, and we do mimic kind of how we grew up to a certain extent. And the things that we were taught, and we try to pass those on to our kids or exemplify that sort of thing in our own relationships. So yes, there's such psychological underpinnings that it is very influential of who we are and how we think we should be in the world. And that's just the teaching, right? Because you have nature versus nurture, you have how you were brought up, but then you throw in the genetic component, and that can totally make things different as well.
Well, how do you bust through the negative patterns? Like, let's say you had a negative parent that was like either critical or they were angry, and you don't like those qualities, and then suddenly you see them in either yourself or your spouse.
Right. So there comes a point, let's say we're at the point where we start to realize, gosh, there's some things about myself that I don't like. I don't like how I'm acting. I don't like why do I create these self-sabotaging behaviors?
Correct.
Okay. How do we get rid of these? Well, there's lots of ways. The first one is to realize that, hey, I've got some things I want to change about myself. And of course, everyone should have a good therapist. be able to go to talk to someone and to be able to figure out, what's wrong and how we can do better with it. But if talk therapy were king, we would all go to therapists and we would all be healed.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But it doesn't always work that way. So the next thing we start to look at, well, what else is there? More than they get into EMDR, right? Or we get into, some sort of regressive healing, or we look into, tapping or some other way to help relieve us of ourselves.
Yeah, I love that.
Right.
The way you put that. Relieve
And that's
us of ourselves.
Right.
That's very well put.
And so what we do is I discovered a method that came out of Europe. It's been there about probably 25 years, and they're natural remedies. They're homeopathics. And if anyone has a little idea of homeopathics, they have ability to have a strong influence on the mind. They're developed by a German doctor, a very bright doctor, and they seem to have the ability to go in subconsciously and begin to root out some of these negative self-defeating belief patterns. Now, it's not meant to replace therapy. It's not meant to replace EMDR. I tell people, bring what you have. Bring all the stuff that you've tried, and let's see if we can't add to it. Let's see if we can't take you to that next level, whether it's, I just have a money block and I don't deserve to make this sort of money. I'll never be able to make this sort of money. Or, you have people who are millionaires, but deep down in their heart, the guy thinks, you know what? I'll never be good enough. My dad told me I wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how much money I make. I'm not really happy with who I am. So they can take all kinds of forms, these self-defeating beliefs.
Like worthiness, not good enough, not lovable. Those are the big ones, right?
Oh, those are huge ones, particularly a lot of women I see, mainly because they're a little more open to talk about this sort of stuff. Men too, but they will often, try to pull up their bootstraps and just, try to, get over it or try to move on. Women are like to talk things out and fix the problem and try to go right. So I hear mostly the women tell me the stories and not so much the men. But those are big, big blocks. Am I worth anything? Can I be loved again? Or am I even lovable? And body image is a huge thing with women, right? Am I really, can I be okay with the way that I look? A lot of women will never come to that conclusion, right?
Right.
So they can take on so many different forms, no matter how we're looking at things.
So you're saying that there's obviously we need to get help talking about stuff if you're a woman or even if you're a man. Sorry, I hope you're listening, because whatever your parents did to you, they had the best intentions in raising you. But even the best parents probably got it right 40% of the time.
Right. And let's talk a little more here about parents, and we can kind of go into what else we can do about it. Right. So there's three main ways that subconscious beliefs are formed. One is through our parents. Okay. What we were taught and how we accepted those beliefs. So we've already kind of touched on that. The second one is genetics. So we inherit things from our parents, whether we like it or not.
Right.
And they have a huge effect on how we can handle life. So one particular example, Rachel Yehuda did a study on the survivors of the children of Holocaust survivors.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know if you've heard of this study, but she found that the children of adults who had been through the Holocaust, maybe been in a concentration camp or had been in that sort of scenario, they had genetically much higher levels of cortisol, which is a stress hormone.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
Than did other Jewish children who had parents who were not in the Holocaust. And so the experiences that your parents went through can change the physiology and can be passed down to you in a good way or a bad way. So in that particular instance, they have a higher level of cortisol. They're a little more, have a propensity to be a little bit more anxious, right? A little more stressed out. But what if you had parents that went through hard times, but it made them better? It made them exactly.
Yeah,
it made them stronger.
Yeah.
It made them stronger, and it made them those genes, those genetic changes do get passed down to you. So now you become a benefit of the experiences your parents went through. So it can go good and it can go bad.
Yeah. I feel the cortisol from having like a anxious dad. And I feel that in my body, but for some reason, through all the stuff I've been through, I've become resilient. Like I had no choice. So I think that's obviously the nature versus nurture, but you can feel all the sides. So I want to talk a little bit more about what you do. Like, how can we be our own guru and override all this kind of stuff and get to a natural resolution?
Okay, so what steps can we take? So before I jump to that, the third step was trauma. Okay.
Trauma, yeah.
A bad divorce, a bad relationship, abuse, right? As an adult, or wrong thinking that was, put onto you as a teenager, whatever it might be, that will form a belief about oneself that may not be beneficial. We can talk about that more if we want to later.
Of course, no, I'm sorry. I want to talk about all of the things.
Okay. Okay. So we'll come back to that question. We'll talk about trauma. So I'm going to give you just one example. Okay. I had a patient. She was probably in her late 20s and she had dealt with an eating disorder for a decade. Pretty severe. Lots of bulimia, anorexia, binge eating, lots of sort of problems.
Right.
And as she had gone through our program, she, after about 3 or 4 months, she had come to me and said, I know exactly what has happened. And she related incidents when she was a track star and she was a runner. And she said, we were doing a weigh-in for some reason. And I got on the scale and I was in great shape. I had no problems. I was very fast. And the coach said, oh, you're 2 pounds overweight. Now, she could have at that point said, Coach, you're crazy. Get out of here. Just take a hike. But in her mind, she accepted that belief.
Yeah.
And this belief began a series of, oh, I need to watch my body. I need to watch my weight. And that created a scenario where she began to be her own worst enemy. And it destroyed. Right. We've all seen that
so many times. Right? If sometimes, a parent or somebody of the opposite sex says one snide remark without thinking, and it could be, if they don't get to you in time, by the time they're in their 20s, it can be 30s and 40s and 50s and on with health problems if you don't help people like that.
That's right. And that's just one example of how a traumatic experience, we can call that trauma, but it may not be the traditional sense of I was abused or I was beaten or something severe. But those sort of things change our perception of who we are and how we need to live in the world. It's part of life. It's part of life.
Absolutely.
So a few years ago, I'm a licensed acupuncturist. I've worked in the naturopathic community for quite a number of years, and I was introduced to a therapy out of Europe. It's created by a medical doctor, and he, probably 30 years, began to use Bach flower remedies. So you may have used Bach flower remedies. You can find Rescue Remedy at Sprouts or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, this was back when no one really knew about Bach flower remedies. And so he was giving them to his patients. He had a special way to test which ones would work best. And we're talking 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And he said, I was getting great results, but it seemed like it just wasn't deep enough. He said the patients always came back. So it was great for business because they needed something else, but it didn't seem like it got deep enough. So he began a process of testing multiple ingredients at various potencies. In homeopathic words, that's different strengths.
Yeah.
And eventually came up with a combination of about 40 different remedies that were designed to treat old emotional subconscious belief patterns. Wow. So he started using these with his patients, getting tremendous results. He was invited onto a program similar to Oprah in Germany. And he says it took off like wildfire. So it's a very large company throughout Europe. It's been there for a number of years. We just got FDA approval. So it just came into the US here in January. Exciting. And it's a tremendous product line. It's all natural, but it seems to have the ability to go in and sort of root out some of these negative subconscious beliefs. One of the biggest side effects we have is vivid dreaming. Wow. So it seems to be able to kind of loosen up some of these old things and allow you to think differently. I have lots of stories and patients and cases we can talk about. But That's essentially kind of what I do now
Yeah.
with my patients as we go through this sort of therapy.
I love that because I think if it's organic and it's natural and you're getting great results, you've done the research and it's been around for 30 years, that's very easy to recommend something like that. Because so many people are going to medications and they're not really getting to the thing behind the thing of why are they behaving this way? Why are they unhappy? Why do they have baggage? Like we all have baggage, just to give it a general term, whether it's from trauma, your parents, your history, as you said. I didn't realize that it could be genetic. So interesting. And I developed this podcast to help people be unstoppable. Launched it during the pandemic because it was hard for me, and I'm imagining it's hard for all of you guys too. So do you have any final tips for our audience, and how can we be unstoppable in our mental and physical health?
Some of the biggest tips that I would have to become unstoppable is to realize that life is going to throw everything at you. It's part of life. It's
Right.
going to stop. It's going to stomp on you, right? You have to get back up. Okay. It's going to be painful. There's going to be times where you're going to say, I wish God would just let me die. Right.
Resilient.
There's going to be,
So we can't
there's going to be
stay
these
with
times.
us, guys. Be resilient, right?
Don't waste your pain. Don't waste your pain. That pain is what will propel you to be a blessing to somebody else. That pain is what will allow you to become a person that you weren't before. It will develop resilience. It will develop wisdom, and it will develop intelligence. And if we can take these things, we grow spiritually, emotionally, physically to prepare us for whatever it is that life may throw at us. But ultimately, we're designed to help each other. And when someone can come from a position to say, I've been where you've been, I've seen it, I've felt what you have felt, and I can help you get out. I can help you see beyond this and bring you to a better place. That's the key, I believe, of becoming resilient, of becoming unstoppable, is trusting that you're going to get through it and it's going to make you better.
I love that message. I was just listening to a podcast with David Goggins saying the benefits of pain, and I believe in that. I really believe in doing the hard things, growing through the hard things so that you can help others and realize how strong we really are. When the pandemic happened, everything had to change. It wasn't fun, but it all worked out for the better for me. And I wish that for you guys too. So Nick, where can people find you?
You can find us on our website at Privia Naturals. That's Privia Naturals with an S.com. And you'll find a button right there on the front. It says, we want to hear your story. You can book a call with us. We'd love to chat with you and see if maybe you'd be a good candidate to try our program and take you to another level, help you get through things that have been a struggle, to heal and really become the person you're supposed to be.
Nick Fransen, thanks for being a great guest on WholeCEO with Lisa G.
Thanks for coming to WholeCEO with Lisa G. After over 20 years helping people lose weight and get fit, I'm so excited to announce that I found the missing link with my coaching. Message me if you want to learn how to look better, feel better, and go faster with a master. Lisa G at lisagfit.com.